this is attached to the back. So this is what you'd see from the road. This is, again, this is Donald Curry's photo, I believe, and these are from the Valley family. And so this is what you'd see from the road. And then the back had that building that had the kitchen and a stove in it, and the boys were sleeping there. And so they separated that building because the early museum members contacted Mr. Valley saying, would you be willing to, what would you, he said, well, maybe when I retire. He said, maybe if you build me a house, maybe I'll give it to you. So the conversation started in the mid-60s, and in 65, the museum members, knowing that the likelihood is they were going to get the body, but of course it's just the body, there's nothing to make it stop or go or run or anything. You got to find all that stuff. So they actually started looking for parts for the car in the years before they even got the car. So Governor Reed at the time was on our board of trustees. And so the newspaper guy, Garnett was one of his staff members and was a rail fan, a trolley fan. And so they worked and found, the museum members found a car in Canada that was going to get scrapped and had wheels, trucks, that were made by the same company, not to the specs because they were unique, but pieces could be used from that car. And so the governor got involved, and those trucks were donated to the museum as a gesture of international goodwill for the Narcissus. And so he finally came around later in the 60s, and you can see these are timbers to build the house. There's the house that was built, but there's the Narcissus. And museum volunteers and friends loaded the Narcissus on the Trolley Museum's tractor trailer and brought it to the museum. On its way to the museum, it was kind of following, for promotional reasons, to raise money, of course. It kind of followed the best it could, the PLI route. So it stopped in West Cumberland, and the driver stopped to get a drink or snacks or something and just pull over. And the owners of that, the Allen's farm, I don't know if so the Allens loved the PLI, so they came out and took pictures of the car in front of their store. And their daughter has donated stuff to us that she's found because her father bought some of the original PLI right away and put houses on it and stuff. So she's found stuff and has donated to us that was all part of that railway, which is cool stuff. So then the car arrived on Halloween 1969. That's when it arrived. So, of course, O.R. Cummings printed his second book about the history of the PLI. I have a copy of it here. And once the costs were raised to offset what he spent to publish the book, everything went to the Narcissus. So that was a fundraising thing. So they did this promotional stuff, raise money for the Narcissus, and the proceeds were all going to the Narcissus project, starting in 69, 70. So here it is in the winter of 70, and you can see that's part of the home piece. It has a tarp on the top, and also in 72, they, for the first time, took the body off the trailer and put it on a set of trucks, a temporary set of trucks, just so it could be transported around. Then in 1988, the trucks that came from Canada, it was put on those trucks. And you can see the lead stained glass windows had come out at that point. Here, they're still in place. The ones that were there are still in place. But you can see the condition in 1992. Now, you look at this is 70s, 80s, 90s, 2001, and 2009. Has it changed too much, what you see visually here? So that doesn't mean nothing wasn't going on, because he had to find all the parts to make it go. So during all that time, starting in the early 1960s, mid-1960s, the museum members started making connections with friends, other trolley museums, wherever. In Boston, because as Boston would take different cars out of service, they might scrap them out, but before they scrap them out, they might strip them of all the mechanical components and then put them in storage to use for other cars, similar. But then when that series of cars were gone, they might call us saying, okay, you gotta come and clean out this, bring the dump trucks. And so there's a fair number of items that came from Boston that will be used, but they traded equipment with museums and individuals in California that group went to Japan, found 3 different sets of trucks just for the Narcissus. Not that they're identical, but you take parts from each of those different. So we have 4 sets of trucks just for the Narcissus, so we can strip parts, and then we still have to have parts manufactured for it. So it finally made it back into the shop. Now over the years it would come in, have some work done, then go out, then come in and then go out. So there was stuff being done, but like these are the arch for the leaded stained glass windows. Every one of them is busted off at the ends. Fortunately, we were able to find one left side and one right side out of all of them, so that they could then be glued together to make a draft to have others replicas made. But almost all the outside of that is poplar. Now there's been no federal or state funding for this car, although I tried, and we've made it to a very high level where it came out of committee in 2011 as one of only 3 out of 47 projects in the state to be come out of committee with a thumbs up for funding. Not for the whole thing, but for a significant amount of money. But if you might remember, 2011, the economy in Maine and throughout the country was, and so because there was some state funding in there, the legislature has to approve any of those expenses. They were like, okay, we're $100 million in deficit. You want us to spend money on a what? No, we're not doing that. So they, Department of Transportation let me carry over to the next cycle, which is 2 years, but still we weren't anywhere. So he said, so I had to start all over again in 2014. So in 2015, we'd raised enough to bring it in and say, okay, we're making a commitment and we're gonna do what we can, raise what we can to get this thing done. But this is how it looked when it first came in, May of 2015. So we would use it the first couple of years as a fundraising tool. So we had the leaded stained glass windows done, and we put some of them in, like this is the smoking compartment, and over the years, volunteers would redo the mahogany stuff inside, because it's all mahogany inside with inlaying. It's an incredible car. And so that's Dan Valley and his wife Rose. Now when they first met, started dating, the first time he introduced Rose to his parents, they were living in the Narcissus. So for me to get a picture of them in the smoking compartment of the Narcissus was just really special. And sadly, he passed away a couple of years later. But he did come, that was 2016. He came in 2015, 2016, and 2017. And then in the fall of 2017, sadly, he passed away. But, so here's the inside early on. Before we cleaned it all out, but you can see the intricate floor tile. Now the seats would go on either side, and we could see where the seats were attached to the floor, but there are no seats. So we have to make all the seats from scratch. And Ernie, we'll get into Ernie on that. But so for us, we kind of look at it in 3 basic setups. There's exterior, there's the trucks, and there's the interior. Now there's a lot of side issues to that, because when it's trucks, you're talking brake components and motors and axles and wheels and all that stuff. The interior, the exterior, there's all kinds of stuff. But so this is stuff that is original to the car that was being worked on in those early years, because that's stuff that the volunteers could work on. And so, like, these are all windows, so you pick the window up in the center. These are window locks. It locks them on each window, passenger window. These go in these are the door handles. These are the light